Hello, and welcome to today's webinar, Leading and Managing Change. Today's webinar is sponsored by our allied partner, TextMed Services, Inc. My name is Shirley Paulson, and I'm your technical host. Thank you for joining us. To adjust your audio settings, click on the microphone at the bottom left of your screen, then click the up arrow to select audio controls. Although your microphone is muted, you can ask any questions at any time with the Q&A icon at the bottom of the screen. Please use the comment section to chat with other attendees, share your thoughts, and let us know where you're from. Our presenter will respond to as many questions as she can during today's session. Today's moderator is Lisa McGuire, CEO and founder of the Manufacturing Safety Alliance of BC. Welcome, Lisa.
Thanks, Shirley, and welcome everyone. Today, I'm joining you from the Fraser Valley office of the Manufacturing Safety Alliance of BC, located in Chilliwack on the traditional and unceded territories of the Stolo Coast Salish people. I am grateful for the opportunity to speak to you from these shared lands today. For those that don't know us, the Manufacturing Safety Alliance is the not-for-profit health and safety association for manufacturers and food processors here in British Columbia. Our team of health and safety experts are here to answer any questions you have to assist you towards developing a health and safety management system to OC certification standards for Occupational Safety Standard of Excellence. At the Alliance, we're here to support the continuous improvement of your health and safety programs to prevent injuries and promote workplace wellness. Please call on us at any time for health and safety training, resources, information, tools, or advice. In this session here today on leading and managing change, we look forward to learning new strategies together to help support our teams through change. Change has always impacted our businesses. We cannot progress without adapting to accommodate the shifting internal and external conditions to progress. What is different, though, about today's environment is the pace and speed of the change occurring, and where most of these changes are outside of our control and happening at times simultaneously, making it difficult for businesses and people to keep up, to cope, and adapt. Whether it be a new health and safety regulation, policy, or economic shift, an impact outside of our control makes it even more challenging than changes we direct or control within our own organizations. How we manage, though, through these conditions is critical to building a progressive, sustainable business and workplace culture that is adaptable and resilient to change, where we aspire to bring all of our team with us along the way. If we want to build a thriving culture, managing change is essential and is an essential skill we need to develop as leaders, supervisors, and health and safety professionals. Today, we'll be talking about how to develop and enhance this critical skill set. We've invited Debbie Permain to help us better understand our role in leading our team's response to change, communicating for buy-in, and recognizing when our teams are facing change fatigue. Debbie is an executive coach and consultant with One Stop HR. With more than 25 years experience supporting CEOs and leadership teams from over 250 companies, Debbie helps leaders develop healthy, engaging, and productive workplaces that inspire their teams. Before I pass the floor over to Debbie, remember, you can ask questions using the Q&A icon at any time during the session. Welcome, Debbie.
Hi, welcome to everyone. And thank you so much for that lovely welcome and introduction. It's so great to see lots of different familiar people on today's webinar. So just had a moment to look through to see who had joined us. So welcome, lots of familiar names. And it's great to be here with all of you. And we're going to just hit the ground running today and talk about some of the key things that you can do to help you in better leading and managing change. As you can see up here, I have worked in HR for quite a while, and I specifically worked in a consulting firm called Accenture around the area of change management in their practice there. And so a lot of the things that I'm going to be sharing with you today, it's just at a high level. We're here for under an hour at this point, but I'm going to give you hopefully some tips of some of the key things that you need to focus on. And so as you can see from our agenda, I'm going to share with you what I've seen over the years in my experience with different clients, that what are key success factors in leading change. And then also just to talk about the leader's role and how you can get buy-in. We have to absolutely have the conversation about how different personalities respond to change or resist change and what those people need in order for them to buy in. And then, as Lisa was saying, we're in a situation right now where, our society's collective mental health is being challenged, and a lot of folks are struggling. We've got 1 in 3 Canadians right now struggling with their mental health, living with mental health disorders, 1 in 5 Canadians, and about 500,000 people off work every week. So what we need to be doing is really recognizing the signs of change fatigue and doing a better job to support our teams as we are going through the change process. Lastly, and I really hope we're going to end up with time to discuss the need for all of you as change agents or leaders of change to make sure that you're also taking care of yourself. So as already has been mentioned, but I just want to reinforce, please feel free to ask questions in the Q&A, also in the chat, and we'd love your interaction and engagement in today's session. So I'm going to ask questions, and I'd love to hear, there's 80 people on our webinar today. I'd love every time I ask a question for you to just type in one thought. It can be one word, don't worry about spelling, but just so you can interact and engage with us today. So let's get going. And our very first topic is, what are the key success factors in leading change? And so I'm going to actually put that out to all of you. If you could think of one key success factor, so without this factor present, you can guarantee the change is not going to go well. What would that factor be? And let's just kind of see. It'll be interesting to see already, as you can see, many different perspectives on this. So everything from commitment to transparency, cross-functional involvement, timing, training, employee buy-in. Let's keep going. There's 80 people. Let's see what else. Communication. Okay, we've got 2 now for communication. Does anyone else want to vote? Vote on which factor do they think is most critical? As you can see, there's a long list here. So as you're going through the material today, I'd love you to have a specific change in mind. And it might be a change you're currently going through in your workplace, or one that you're anticipating, or it could be a change you have recently been through. Because part of today is I want to help you grow in self-awareness with some self-reflection. So if you're thinking of the change success factors, you see a lot of them listed up here. Thank you. And I'm now seeing, yes, psychological safety, trust, great. More on communication, alignment. There's a lot of things. And so I want you to look at this list up here. Many of you have said these things. Interesting, I didn't see, and maybe I've missed it in the chat, but leadership support is critical. Tools and resources, absolutely critical. What about frequent check-ins on the progress and celebrating success along the way? These are all, I'm going to say, kind of your checklist of important factors. And so what I'd like you to do, even now you could do this, is just take a photo of this slide. I encourage companies to create checklists when going through change. This is what's going to keep you accountable. Are you ensuring that these things are happening all throughout the change life cycle? Not just at the beginning, not just in the middle, not just when things start to go sideways, but all throughout the change life cycle. The next question I'm going to ask you is, what do you believe is the leader's role? So if you are a leader and you are implementing change in your department, in your organization, again, if you could think of one thing, what do you believe is the leader's role? Facilitator, listener, okay, to guide. Yeah, ensure clear communication. Great, remove roadblocks. I could not agree more. Communicate the vision. Thank you. We all need to know where we are headed and why we are headed there. Yes, ensure accountability. Great. So again, lots of good thoughts in the chat. Thank you for your participation. And yes, I could not agree more with a comment that just came in, lead by example. So here we go again. Here's your list. Create a compelling vision. Make sure you've got a good strategy. Make sure your strategy has what? SMART goals. I'm going to answer some questions as we go through today. And one of the main things I see where strategy breaks down is that the timeframes are completely unrealistic. And so then you've got all these people like experiencing tremendous amount of stress and distress, trying to accomplish and achieve something that maybe made sense at one point in time, but then wasn't adjusted as factors and circumstances changed. So I also think the leader's role is to have a good pulse, right, on their people, how they're doing, what's going well, what's not going well. Key, gaining buy-in. Every stakeholder involved needs to be bought in. And we're going to look at that in a little more detail. Notice I've said the word communicate up here 3 times. Communicate, communicate, communicate. Many of you mentioned already lead by example. What about this one? Anticipate resistance. I think a lot of times, I do emotional intelligence testing for leaders, and there's actually a component of emotional intelligence called reality testing. How many of you have heard of reality testing? Why I'm mentioning that is a lot of times when I do assessments, I can see on the assessment that some leaders' reality testing score is quite low. And I just want you to consider for a moment the impact that that would have when it comes to change. Like if the leader's reality testing score is low, that tells me that there's a big gap in perception between what the leader's thinking, feeling, and experiencing and how employees are actually thinking and feeling and what they're experiencing. So the leader's job is to understand that gap. And there's some tools, right, that we can implement that will help with that. And there, of course, is going to be resistance when stakeholders are not bought in. So we need to anticipate that and have strategies in place to address resistance early. So often I hear also the frustration from managers and supervisors that I coach where people are still stuck in their old ways. That's an example for me of a situation where there wasn't anticipation of resistance, an awareness or recognition of passive and active resistance when it was happening. And then no one was holding said resistor accountable to adopt the new ways, right? So these are all some of the skills. And I teach lots of different training sessions on how to lead change, how to manage change that incorporate all of these topics and concepts in more detail. And as you also saw here, it's this frequent check-ins and celebrating success. So I think now you've heard that twice, right, Lisa, which is we cannot ignore good things And we're so busy and we're all so stressed and we're all running on that hamster wheel that what happens is the only thing we notice or that gets our attention are the issues and problems. And then everyone's like, why is everyone so unmotivated? Why is employee engagement down the tubes? Because we're not stopping and paying attention to the positives and the good things and giving recognition and celebration to those things, right? And so we know whatever we pay attention to is what we get more of. We've got to make that more a part of our consciousness. And so it's nice to see you, Lisa, and I'm sure we have questions already. So let's go.
Well, just, thank you so much for the information you shared, really, really thoughtful and intriguing for us to really make sure that we do all those things. But having a clear and compelling vision, we know is important for leaders. But as we've seen over the past few years, sometimes we're just trying to respond to what's happening around us. And sometimes, people who are implementing and leading change don't have all the information to deliver the perfect vision. Does this matter? And if so, what is the approach in this circumstance?
Yeah, no, this is great. So, there's so much philosophy around this idea of vision and why it's really necessary for human beings to connect to anything, right? So, I could give all kinds of philosophical backgrounds and psychological explanations for why this is important. Here's the bottom line. Your people need a vision. They need to know where they're going and why they're going there. And without that, right, people lose focus. We are in the most driven by distraction culture that I've ever lived in today. And we could, again, get into a whole discussion about that. But creating a compelling vision is critical. And Lisa, can I just say this? This vision stuff doesn't need to be complicated. It is not rocket science. I have so many clients who we're still trying to agree on vision. We haven't communicated vision because we need another vision strategy session. And I'm literally like, time is ticking. You are losing your people. You can have a vision and you can reframe it 3 months later or change it 6 months later. But to absolutely have no vision does not give anyone a direction or a focus, right? So again, it's what is a compelling vision? We weren't even going to get into this today, but I teach it. And it's like the vision needs to not just communicate where you're going, but why you're going there.
So perfect. Vision, you need to have a vision. It doesn't have to be perfect. Aligned to that is strategy, the how.
Yes.
Leaders aren't perfect, right? We know that at times there's an expectation of perfection with perfect decisions.
Yeah.
Sometimes the strategy doesn't work. What type of strategies can you share that will help leaders facing the unknown build a more compelling map or strategy for their teams?
Yeah. So again, here's the thing. I feel like one of the things I see is that so often, again, we get hung up on this need for something perfect before executing. And that's actually not necessary. So I know that in a safety culture, or perhaps with who's on this webinar today, the thought of that might make some folks feel very uncomfortable. And part of this comes down to personality types, right? So a lot of people who are highly analytical are also highly cautious. And what I'm going to say here is a lot of the times the people who are at the head of companies, CEOs, right, COOs, more CEOs and presidents are more that driver personality type. And we're going to get into personality type soon. Why I'm saying this to you is you don't need, again, to wait till you get it perfect. So what is it you need? You need a vision, you need goals. More importantly, you need process and strategy. And then you need to be frequently checking in and making adjustments as needed. So what I see is stalling on vision, sticking stubbornly to strategy that maybe is no longer working, the lack of frequent checking in and pivoting and adapting. Those are like right out of the gate, kind of 3 things that I notice when I'm consulting with companies and clients around change.
Excellent advice, Debbie. Finally, the last question before you move on with your presentation. You talked about the importance of communication. I mean, it was listed over 3 times, in fact. But do you think that there are times when we over communicate?
Well, again, so this is really interesting. Every personality is going to have a different perspective on what frequency and need for communication should look like. So here's another concept, and I'm cautious to get too much into this personality style stuff, but this is, again, one of the mistakes that I often see managers or company leaders make. They don't have a good read on the personality types of their business, who's doing the work. And based on their type, what is it they need to thrive and succeed in change? And so there are some personality types, right, that need a lot more time, a lot more information, a lot more patience. And if you don't give it to them, they will definitely become detractors, resistors, and become disengaged. Excellent. You need to know, right, who your people are and read it properly. And then there's other departments and personality types where just what you said, their perspective might be like, you're just communicating way too often. I don't think you can over communicate. I think in the absence of information, people make up all kinds of stories, assumptions, even inaccurate stories, gossip, right? We call distorted thought patterns start popping in there, mind reading, fortune telling. And this is one of the things that creates a lot of problems and mistrust. People start gossiping, right? And making up their own version of reality because there's nothing to fill in the gaps. So I think you need to have a solid communication strategy. And again, know your audience and what their needs are.
Excellent. I will let you move on. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks, Lisa.
Yes.
Thank you. Great questions. And thank you, because I know that you're doing a fabulous job monitoring our Q&A behind the scenes. Thank you for all those great questions. By now, the rest of you have already had a chance to reflect on this. And I think it's really important as you're just here today listening to me. What do you think is going well for your team, your organization, from what you've heard me say so far? What are your strengths when it comes to leading and managing change, right? What's resonating for you? And you're like, yes, Debbie, we're doing it. And then the other piece is to just reflect on things you've heard me say. And you're like, okay, we're not getting it right, or we're not doing that well. So this is like kind of a SWOT analysis, right? It's what are your strengths when it comes to leading and managing change? What are your weaknesses? And then can I also offer that we all have blind spots? So what might some of your blind spots be? And that's that gap in perception between what executives and leaders think, or health and safety folks think, and what employees actually think. And then what is your strategy for how you are going to become aware of those gaps so you can start minimizing and addressing the gaps? So I'm going to ask you that question. What do you currently do in your team or organization that helps you become aware of employees' thoughts, feelings, and experiences? What do you currently do? And how often would you do that? And what are you doing to help minimize, right, the gaps that exist? And here's the thing, research shows us, right, gaps exist. It doesn't matter. I have lots of HR folks, leaders who are like, I have a good pulse on my culture. I know my people. I've been in HR a long time. I can tell you that when you ask people directly for feedback, they are not always honest. Because this is work, right? You've got authority, you've got power. People are not always going to be honest with you with their feedback. I don't care how much you know them, how trusting you are. So I'm going to suggest, and I'm looking at quickly some of the thoughts coming in here. I think it's so great to do one-on-ones, coffee meetings, huddles. This is all good. And I'm going to tell you the number one strategy I use with my clients is to do employee engagement surveys. You need to be doing these at least once a year. It needs to be comprehensive, and it needs to be covering the 13 factors now for psychological health and well-being. I'm just going to say to you that many of the clients I work with don't do surveys, or they do surveys and they administer them in-house, which is not effective. Or they have surveys, and when I ask them, please send me your survey so I can just see what you're surveying, they're not asking the right questions. They're not measuring the right categories. The last takeaway I want to say about the surveys is that you absolutely, in times of change, should be doing a large survey once a year, and perhaps 2 to 3 what we call mini pulse check surveys throughout the year. Do employee engagement surveys tell you what you want to hear? Absolutely not. When they're administered by an outside third party and employees feel that it's completely safe and confidential. So I do surveys for my clients, and I hear all kinds of feedback and help create strategies. Why this is so critical is you and I can't better manage what we're not aware of first. So hoping you're already getting some good takeaways about how you can be doing an even better job at managing change. All right, the next thing I think is really important that we talk about is stakeholder buy-in. And here's some of the key things I want to mention about stakeholder buy-in. Who are your stakeholders? And what is their stake? So the big question, and this is where it doesn't matter what you're communicating to other people. You need to understand how the human brain works and the psychology behind commitment and motivation and buy-in. So often when I work with teams, right, or companies where people are struggling to adapt to changes, we recognize quickly that it's because they didn't buy in the first place. And when I do these surveys and I ask questions, everyone knows the vision. Everyone knows the goals. And lots of people know the strategy. What do you think the most important question is that the individual stakeholders don't have an answer to? What's missing from the communication? And I'm telling you, what's missing is the critical success factor. What do you think it is? I'd love to hear thoughts in the chat. What is missing? So vision, great. Strategy, great. Goals, great. So strategy is the how. And so absolutely, we have winners, but sometimes people are sending me comments privately, so I don't want to call you out, okay? Here's the 2. Number 1, why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? Why are we doing this now? Why are we doing it this way? And then lastly, what is in it for me? What's in it for me? So not what's in it for the customer, what's in it for the client, what's in it for the world, what's in it for the environment, what's in it for the company, what's in it for the shareholders, what's in it for, like, I hope you're getting it, right? The actual question that each stakeholder needs to understand. Why are we doing this? And how am I benefiting from this? How is this going to benefit me in my job day to day? And if there are no benefits to me personally, what consequences will this change help me avoid? So here's the thing. We absolutely, like, when I ask employees, like, do you understand why this is happening? Or do you understand why now? Or do you understand how this is going to benefit you, or like the consequences that it's protecting you from? You can guess the answer, right? Employees look at me very blank-faced, and they will tell me what they've read, right? Or what they've heard at town halls, or what they've seen on the intranet or through corporate communications, which is a lot of what? How the environment will benefit, how the client, how the customer, how the company, how the shareholder. Here's the hard truth. In psychology, the decision maker in our brains are all like, what's in it for me? What am I benefiting? How is this saving me from some kind of consequence? That's motivation theory, right? The pleasure pain principle. Now, you can apply that kind of theory to a lot of other things when it comes to managing in the workplace. But I'm going to suggest that that's a critical piece to getting buy-in. So I've just kind of finished these slides, and I'm curious, Lisa, are there any questions that have come in around getting buy-in?
So a question for you, Debbie. I mean, excellent questions. For increased stakeholder buy-in, do you think it's important for leaders to also have similar values to their team members? And what happens when values don't align? And how do you achieve a successful outcome?
Yeah, so again, great question. Now, these are all much broader HR questions. So when it comes to values alignment, there's some really important pieces, again, I think, that are missing in execution. That's like another area of consulting, isn't it? Forget about change management. How do we, right, get values alignment? Well, I'm going to say, so often it's leaders and executives who make decisions and agreements about values. And then they kind of communicate them out and hope everyone buys in. So my approach, like many HR consultants, is you start at the grassroots. Involve employees in decision-making around values and really help them understand the need for values and make sure there's a shared commitment to said values. And beyond just like so many companies, right? Values on the website, values on the meeting room wall and a poster that look good. When again, I do surveys and I ask questions like, I know the company values, and then I say, can you write them in this text box below? What do you think we discover? Not true. And so where's the disconnect? And so beyond just kind of putting stuff like that out there, we also need to ensure that we are training everyone from recruitment to orientation so that values are living and breathing in the organization. Now, you kind of had two parts to your question. So can you just tell me the second part to the question?
So what happens when there's a misalignment of values? I mean, even if you do what you said, get stakeholder buy-in, take your time to do it well. The outliers in that circle, if you will, may not always have the same, may not always agree. How do you achieve a successful outcome for those individuals that may not see themselves with the same values that you end up moving forward with?
So again, I think my thought is it all comes down to values creation. And if an organization has a value of, I don't know, passion for growth, or adaptable to change, or responsive to client customer needs, then it's up to the organization to ensure that in their hiring process, in their onboarding process, in their performance management process, that these values are really being clearly communicated, assessed for, monitored, and enforced, right? It's really a bit around accountability. And again, I can tell you now we're going into a whole nother territory. When I do performance management consulting, why do organizations today still not have values on their performance reviews? I mean, I don't understand that, right? Like, we assess people on goals. That tells people what to do. Why are we also not assessing people on how they get their work done, which is the values? So I need to, just enforce in this conversation, or just reinforce that the idea of values is like a great theory. And I just don't think enough organizations are implementing and executing and reinforcing values properly in their culture, which is then why, of course, in times of change, you'll start to see all the resistance, rumbling, and disconnect.
So values not being a product on the shelf, but integrating throughout the pieces within the organization, foundational to performance, accountability, all the things you're saying, so that it's a living, breathing product or piece of the organization.
Yeah, and then we also have to embed it in like how we reward and recognize people. So again, right, bigger HR components. Like I also say, when we come to employee recognition, I'll ask clients, what are you currently recognizing? So I'd love everyone on here just to think for a moment. You can type this in the chat. What do you currently recognize? And you'll start to see all kinds of themes, Lisa, like years of service, safety, right? Meeting targets, whatever the things are that are being measured or being recognized. And then I'm like, why aren't we recognizing people for living and breathing our values?
Yes. Like,
so all parts of the organization, if you really want the values to have impact. Otherwise, this is why you and I are talking about this in times of change, where you're now inviting instability. This is where you're going to start to see values disconnect, because literally what happens is people go into survival mode and protective mode. Right? And this is psychology of change. When someone goes through change, they're going to go into survivor mindset, protective mindset. And what is it that those mindsets need? They need to have vision. They need to have trust and safety. And without those things, this is where the values disconnect starts coming up in behaviors.
Excellent. Okay, I'll let you continue on. Thank you.
Thank you. And Lisa, great questions. And as you can see, it's almost like every one of these slides could be its own little unique presentation. There's lots to explore. Okay, and I'd love to still see from folks that are on our webinar today, what does your organization currently recognize and reward? So I've only seen a few thoughts, and this is for you to share and learn from each other today also. So please type something into the chat to share with your colleagues. You've heard this already mentioned a few times today. So personalities and change. I think this is so important, and it often is ignored or not even considered. I have the pleasure of working with many organizations and many different groups and teams. And so the piece around personality types, it doesn't matter what tool you use to better understand personalities. I'm going to suggest that all leaders who work in any organization needs to have some kind of training around how to manage different personality types. So I teach training for leaders on that topic, and the assessment that I use is called the DESA Behavior Index. It's not as well known, but it's very easy to implement and understand. I'm curious for all of you, which personality assessments does your organization use? So typically, right, there's things like Myers-Briggs or Insights. What about DISC? Thank you. Deca, thank you. What about True Colors? I mean, there's so many different ones out there. And again, I just be candid. I don't care which one you use. The idea is that we just need to be teaching our supervisors and managers about different personalities and what they need, and especially when it comes to managing change. When we don't pay attention to what someone needs, what do you think happens? So I just want you to reflect on your own life. Like if you have kids, or if you have a spouse, or if you have a sister or a brother or a friend, when you don't pay attention to what they need in a relationship, what happens in the relationship? What happens? So communication breaks down. What else happens? When we ignore people's needs in relationship, come on, what happens? Trust is undermined. Great. Assumptions get made. There's a disconnect. Attachment breaks down. There's hurt feelings, disengagement, distance, disconnect, withdraw. Okay, can everyone just take a collective deep breath here? Thank you, Jack. Resistance and frustration. So again, as a consultant going in, and we've got teams or companies trying to implement change, and there's a lot of frustration, and there's a lot of what? Disconnect or disengagement. Can we just pause for a moment? Yes, resentment. How about quiet quitting? Right? How about presenteeism? So here's what happens, right? Our job is to learn about different people's personalities on our teams. You know, there's organizations, there's department personalities, but if you're a manager or a supervisor, number one skill, get your team to do some kind of personality assessment. It doesn't need to be costly. It doesn't need to be rocket science. Like I said, I use the DESA behavior index. Super simple, easy to administer, easy to score. You don't need a certification to use it. And from that, you then know, oh, my team is this. Therefore, when we go through change, this is how they'll respond. This is why they'll resist. This is therefore what they need. And then what is my role as a leader is to do my best to provide them with what they need. Now, that's really all the time we have for today on this topic. It's a huge topic and worthy of an entirely separate training session, but I really wanted to introduce that to you because this is why you get the resistance and the disengagement. Transition curve. This is another really important concept for all of us to learn, that when people go through change, it doesn't matter how big, how small the change. This is literally the psychological process that we all go through. When something ends, there is a loss that people experience. Now, obviously, the larger and more personal the change, the larger the impact of loss or grief is going to be. Like I've in HR had many people experience tremendous loss over things like moving office locations or moving desks. I think we don't, again, have a good understanding on the psychology of change. And this is why I wanted to put this change curve here so that you get a sense and understand that before people's resiliency kicks in, so they can bounce back and become positive supporters, creative types, innovators, change agents, and engagers, we actually need to allow them the time and space to kind of like have their feelings and go through their process. So here's a quick question. How can you help your employees when something ends? And this is, again, this psychological piece that I think a lot of managers and supervisors don't consider. So I'm going to suggest this is where more frequent one-on-ones or team huddles, or again, the introduction of more pulse check surveys. so that people have a safe way or place to express how they're feeling. The sooner we put those things into play, the sooner we will help people process, the more quickly they will bounce back and engage. But when we neglect or ignore this important part of the change process, then we get people stuck, and sometimes stuck for years. By the time I go to do a survey or have a meeting, I mean, the stuff that comes out is like from 5 years ago or even 10 years ago. So it's really important that we provide venues, opportunities, and circumstances where employees can safely express their frustrations, their disagreement, so that they can then become adapters. Again, I could speak so much on this topic, but I really wanted to introduce you to this. Another key thing I'm going to say here is this is where your EAP programs are really going to come in handy. And I would encourage that when you're going through change, there should be a massive push for the resources and supports to support employee mental health and well-being. EAP, benefits, I don't know, some companies have support groups, peer support groups, whatever you can, right, to give people a sense that they're supported while processing and going through difficult emotions and feelings and stress. So this is now leading us, and we're kind of nearing the end here, and I know they're probably going to have more questions. Lisa will join us in a moment. I've seen a few come in. Change fatigue. When we don't properly support folks and we have unrealistic timeframes and we don't provide things like tools and resources, what we're going to see is all of this, right? So the complaining, the gossiping, the presenteeism, the resisting, the apathy, the reactivity, and even burnout. And I will tell you that from the work I do, a lot of organizations are in this place right now. A lot of organizations. And I'm hoping, you know, I do a lot of teaching on how to support mental health and well-being in the workplace, and how to better support employees by coaching them for resiliency. These are all just examples of tools and skills that managers and supervisors can learn that will help support employees through this process. And so we need to recognize, right, the signs of change fatigue. So can I just ask all of you to just think about, like, is there one thing your organization has done in, say, the last 6 months that's helped to support employees with their mental health, with their well-being, or even experiencing what we call change fatigue? I'd love to just hear from all of you. What is one thing that your organization has invested in? Yeah, so I'm getting lots of private messages, which is awesome. Thank you for your honesty, saying nothing. So I'm so sorry to hear this. I mean, it's a real problem in our society and in our workplaces, and we're having quiet quitting and we're having turnover. And can I tell you, the number one reason employees are leaving today is because of the lack of work-life integration or mental health well-being supports. And yes, this is a bit generational. So the research is showing us that it is. But I'm going to encourage you again, if you're doing engagement surveys, you should be absolutely tracking these 13 factors for psychological health and well-being. If you're not sure what they are, Google them after today. You can email me. I can help you with your surveys. You need to start seeing this and measuring it, because even as I see in here, a lot of folks are saying they're EAP. That is so wonderful. And the national use of EAP programs is less than 13%. So this is a huge challenge, right? We got lots of companies who check a box. We have an EAP program. We're supporting people. And then I'll say, Lisa, what is your usage rate? One of my clients is doing a fantastic job promoting EAP, and their usage rate is only 20%. So EAP is a checkbox. It's not enough. It is scratching the surface. And if you need help with this, please feel free to reach out to me. I'd be happy to give other ideas and suggestions. So what kind of questions, Lisa, do we have on this last part?
So I'm just going to give you one because I am sensitive to time and I want to make sure you get through your presentation. It's really fabulous content. So when we talk about change fatigue, are there types of companies that would experience it more than others? And if so, why? Is it a particular demographic, a particular population, or is it just characteristics, as you've noted?
So great question, and not a quick answer. So again, it's going to depend on the disconnect between the leaders and where employees are at. That's one. It could absolutely depend on the industry. So I have a ton of clients in, for example, high tech. That is absolutely an industry that's really struggling. Why? Because a lot of folks that go to work in high tech are highly analytical. And being highly analytical, one of your kind of weaknesses or like not so strong characteristics is that change is hard. So think about that for a minute. You're in an industry that's demanding you to pivot quick and be innovative and responsive and reactive, driven by a whole bunch of high D personalities. But all the people behind the scenes doing the work, when you look at their personality types, most of them are A's and S's. And this is, again, where this stuff then has a huge impact. So I hope that answered, and I could say a lot more, but I know that we're just mindful of other questions with our time. Any other questions?
Yeah.
Any other questions? So as we're at the end of our presentation, right, I know we do still have time for questions, which is great. I think the last thing I'm just going to say for everyone who's on this webinar today is that your self-care is your number one priority. And I think as leaders, so often we neglect our needs and feel so responsible for taking care of all these other people in our lives that are kind of in our care. And I coach a lot of leaders. And what I'll say in the last 3 years, and this is not an exaggeration, pretty much 90% of my clients that I coach who are leaders, what I'm coaching them on right now is their mental health and well-being. And a lot of it comes down to allowing themselves to be a priority and then scheduling it in and creating a plan for their well-being, right? We can't just kind of cross our fingers and hope that we're going to like get through this stuff mentally healthy and well. We do need a well-being strategy, Lisa. And part of our well-being strategy is day to day, week to week, right? So I take a vacation twice a year. Yeah, not going to cut it. So I really want to encourage all of you you've heard it, oxygen mask on first. And again, what's the why? Because then you're no good for anybody else, right? And leading today is not for the faint of heart. So I really want to just say, if you're leading change, you have to be the best role model for your team. And the best way you can do that is to think of your habits and behaviors that are healthy and not healthy, and just really start making a plan to focus more on, not just doing the healthier habits and behaviors, but coaching and encouraging your team. That's what's going to help them with their change fatigue. But they're going to look to you first as the example.
Wonderful feedback and wonderful content, Debbie. Really, really thankful for you presenting here today. Looking at, I know you have a couple of slides, so this is an excellent question. I was just going to invite it. What's one thing you can commit to doing differently when leading change after today's session? Put it in the chat. Would love.
Yeah, I was gonna say, are there any questions that have been unanswered? I mean, we do have 5 minutes, so I'd love everyone here to think of their one action step. And maybe you're here today and you're like, I've heard 6 things. Write them down, but really I want to encourage you on 1% better. So take one action. This is from that book, Atomic Habits, and focus on one thing that you can really commit to and implement consistently. And once you feel like that's become a thing for you, then go back to your list and pick another thing, right? But set yourself up for success. Any questions?
Yeah, I'm looking.
Yes, we've got the emergency alert test going off in our
Oh, dear. Well, it's very important. But like you say, distraction a bit, right?
Yeah, that's okay. I'm looking through the Q&A. What is covered in pulse surveys? Great question. I'm going to suggest all aspects of HR. So everything from leadership to policies, processes, recruitment, safety, performance management, rewards and recognition, compensation and benefits, as well as work environment and the 13 factors for psychological health and well-being, which you can just Google that and you'll see the list. Any other questions that are here? Do I have a sample engagement survey to share? Oh, I wish I did. You know what? Here's what I'm going to say. Again, Google is my best friend. Sometimes people email me and say, can you give me a sample engagement survey? And I'm like, I'm going to save you some quick money here. Just Google. And you can find one online and just make it your own. But here's where I'm going to be honest, and this is not self-serving. You could ask any HR consultant to help you. Doesn't need to be me. Do not administer your surveys in-house. That is absolutely for the cost versus the benefit of doing it. All the research says that when you have an external person administer your survey, the reliability, the validity is way more positive and impactful.
That is wonderful, Debbie. We're going to have to stop here because there is a few closing slides, and really want to thank you. Exceptional content, a wealth of information that will be processed and sent to all of you. So if there's anything that you didn't get to that you want to double check, you will be able to get this very, very soon. My team is exceptional in getting things together very quickly. So I want to move forward now, just thanking you all once again. And if you do have questions not answered, we'll make sure that we do get that information to you. In just over 2 weeks, join us for our upcoming town hall on Thursday, May 25th, tomorrow's Industry Today, Technology, Skills, Training, and Safety. I'll be sitting down with industry executives Bill Jeffrey from Metri and Jason Longden from Fine Choice Foods to discuss how to prepare for the future and how technology, skills, training, and the integration of robotics is impacting our industry. Today also is the early bird ticket deadline for our 2023 Safety Pinnacle Awards Gala coming up Thursday, June 8th. It's just around the corner. We invite you to be part of the big night as we celebrate manufacturing leaders in health and safety. I really hope to see you there. It will be an extraordinary event. We can't wait to recognize all of our companies and individuals for the work they do and have done to inspire and strengthen health and safety within their companies and, of course, in the community. Visit us online anytime for help or to access our full library of webinars, resources, and training. Watch for an email link tomorrow to the recording of today's session. And of course, a survey link will be shared with all of you to garner your feedback and topic ideas. Thank you all today for attending. Have a safe day.